All right, friends, it's time to give you loyal listeners a discount on protein powder. You may or may not know, but I launched my very first protein powder 2 years ago. It's a grass-fed beef isolate with only 3 ingredients: grass-fed beef, either organic cacao or organic vanilla, and organic monk fruit. Now, if you don't want any of the added flavor and sweeteners, you can also just get unflavored. And no matter what flavor you choose, you're getting over 23 grams of protein per scoop, which is going to keep you full and satisfied between meals. I love starting my day with a Fab4 smoothie and breaking my fast with that much protein. It makes a serious difference in my cravings and blood sugar balance the rest of the day, and I've seen it with my clients as well. Now, I never thought I'd own a product company, but when I got pregnant with Sebastian, I realized the majority of protein powders were chemically extracted or enzymatically extracted, and I wanted to use heat and water only. I wanted minimal ingredients because we don't need those emulsifiers, fillers, or added vitamins, minerals, and probiotics. All of those additions increase the chances that it's not going to work for your body, whether it be bloating, digestion issues. I just wanted pure, clean protein to keep you full and satisfied so you could build the most delicious Fab4 smoothie. And I have to say, I'm pretty proud of the flavor. If you take a look at our reviews on Amazon, you'll see 5-star reviews for flavor. And that is key, because if you don't love your Fab4 smoothie and you don't love drinking your protein powder, you're not going to do it. It won't become a habit, and it's consistency that outpaces everything. So if you're here and you're listening and you want to give our protein powder a try, use the code PODCAST5 for $5 off your order. And let me know if you love it. My favorite ways to apply this protein powder is in my Fab4 smoothie, making freezer fudge, making chocolate milk, making hot chocolate, and throwing the unflavored into all my kids' baked goods. So let me know how you use it. Let me know if you love it, and share this podcast deal with your friends. Dr. Anna Maria Temple is a pediatrician, award-winning speaker at Harvard Club of Boston, and a frequent guest on TV news and talk shows. In her 20-year career, she has treated over 36,000 patients. She is the author of The Rule of 5, A Parent's Guide to Raising Healthy Kids in an Unhealthy World, which was released in the fall of 2020. After confronting her children's eczema, Dr. Anna Maria began exploring a root cause approach to health and overhauled the nutrition in her home. Now she practices an integrative approach and owns her own practice, Integrative Health Carolinas, in Charlotte, North Carolina, where she helps hundreds of families achieve wellness with less medication. Dr. Anna Maria, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited to have you as a guest on the podcast, because you not only wrote an amazing book called The Rule of 5 that I recommend to my clients who are moms, but you've also been on the eczema journey that I've been on with your children. So I'd love to start there. You're a doctor practicing traditional medicine, and then all of a sudden you're confronted with your children's eczema. How did your personal story change your path, and what were you going through at the time?
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited to talk about this. I'm as passionate as you are about helping parents just change the story of their children's lives and to help them navigate this confusing world with less medication. But yeah, so I'm a traditionally trained doctor. And when I was in practice in 2004, at that time I was in practice for 5 years, and I had 3 children. And my daughter, 6 at the time, she had eczema, asthma, recurring croup infections, constipation, seasonal allergies. Every time she had a cold, it would turn into an ear infection with eczema flare up. Every time that she got croup, it would turn an asthma attack with an eczema flare. My little one, who was only 2 at that time, was covered in hives and rashes from pollen. And he couldn't even go out for an Easter egg hunt because he would be on the ground writhing in pain with his eyes swollen shut and like tears streaming down his cheeks. He was on 5 allergy medications at that time. And then my middle one, he had the kind of snot, like the kind of boogers that these days you would never be allowed to go to school, get on a plane, or like leave your house, you know? And there was just not enough tissues in Costco to keep that situation under control. And interestingly, he was also had ADHD. And, you know, I got sick and tired of them being sick all the time. I mean, my travel bag had so many over-the-counter medications. It was ludicrous. And I took them to the doctor and, you know, I asked them, like, what are we going to do about this? And they're like, oh, well, for the princess, I mean, she takes daily inhaled steroids. Her asthma will be fine. Daily topical steroids. Her eczema will be fine. And she'll take allergy medicines, which will keep her asthma and her eczema under control. She'll eventually outgrow ear infections and croup, and she's going to be fine. And then for the little one, and I quote, we'll run out of medications. The only next step is allergy shots. He was 2 years old. And for my 4-year-old, they were like, okay, well, his snot's disgusting. He clearly has recurrent sinus infection. So we're going to have to put him on antibiotics. And then we'll have to treat his ADHD. But we don't even know where to go with that right now. I stopped listening at that point because all I could hear was like more medications and more medications. No one was telling me, but why? I just wanted to know why they're so sick. And it was about a week later when I was like, the mama warrior took over. Like the doctor self didn't know what to do. I had no idea what to do. And then the mama warrior was like, this could not be the answer for my children. Chronic daily medications for the rest of their lives. And there was a nutritionist that was talking to my children's school. And I went in with a different mindset and the fog lifted. And I saw clearly exactly what was the root cause of my children's issues. All she talked about was sugar. And I went home that evening after work, to the horror of the children and the husband, I went into the pantry and threw out the Lucky Charms, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, Pop-Tarts, chicken nuggets, mac and cheese. I mean, name a garbage food. We had it. You're welcome, folks. I did it all from the beginning. So we started the journey from fast food, processed food, all the sugar you can eat. And, and then that unfortunately started my era of isolation. My husband and I fought for 5 years over food. My friends thought I lost my mind. My family pretty much scratched me off their will. I mean, they were like, well, what are you doing? And my medical partners were equally baffled. What is happening? What are you doing? What is the medical research? And at that time, Google wasn't what it is today. So there wasn't the research that was happening. And I didn't know what the right answer was, but I knew in my heart of hearts, medical and mom world, that having my children eat more fruits and vegetables and less garbage food could not be the wrong answer. And over the next, 11 years, my children came off. I mean, it took about 5 years because I didn't know, but it took 5 years and they stopped needing antibiotics, needing steroids, needing chronic daily medications. And in 2016, my husband and I, we quit our jobs. We moved to New Zealand, no doctors, no health insurance, no medications. And my children thrived. They climbed the highest mountains and bungee jumped off the tallest bridges and didn't even need a Tylenol in a foreign country with foreign germs and foreign everything. And I knew at that time, I was like, oh my gosh, this totally works. And then I practiced medicine differently in New Zealand. And when I came back to the States in 2018, I was not going to do the same old. And so I opened my new practice and I started treating patients with food and lifestyle changes and made huge differences. Unfortunately, in 2019, my son, my middle son, the one with a lot of snot and ADHD, developed eczema, pretty severe eczema on the bottom half of his face, his neck and upper chest. And bleeding, like the kind of scratching at nighttime. He wakes up in the morning and you see the crusty, bleeding, oozy situation that horrifies everyone. That's what he had. And I was like, oh, what is happening? And so I went into full doctor mode on that one, because this time I knew exactly what to do compared to previous episodes where I was lost. And I put him on the exact same plan that all my patients are on. We got his eczema under control within 7 days. But that's because I knew what I was doing. And I was like, we're going full core press. We're not at this, like, we're weaning off things. We are full core press. And, he got better. He did amazing. He had a slight relapse January of this year because of college admissions and the stress that he internalized with a touch of pollen. And he's had all his foods back and everything, but we had a slight setback. We knew what to do, went back to the drawing board. Boom, we're back to thriving within a week. And the whole point that I'm trying to say is the body's continuously changing. No one's perfect. No one has all the answers. What we do have is humanity, and we just have to learn something. I didn't know that my C-section with my first child was going to lead her to have ear infections and croup infections, and the antibiotics that she got at birth and with her ear infections was going to lead to her eczema, and the eczema was going to move to asthma, and the asthma to seasonal allergies and constipation. Everything was interrelated. And then I didn't realize, that my son that had chronic antibiotics for sinus infections was going to end up with eczema at the age of 15. Because you think you're out of the woods. We're never out of the woods, and our body's continuously changing. So we have to be vigilant without being ridiculous, but we have to be vigilant about our children and our bodies on a daily basis.
Oh, I love your passion because it comes from a personal story. And I feel that deep inside my soul, because we talked before the podcast started, that Sebastian, like your middle child, had bleeding, crusty skin all over his face, where he would sleep on his sheets and pull up and you would see the cotton coming off of his organic Burt's Bees sheets right onto his face, like a gray little mustache and beard. And it breaks a mother's heart, especially when it's like, this is the root. This is what I do. This is what I do. I need to be able to make change and fix this. And we were able to get it under control. But I want to ask you, because you've been now working with so many patients, what is the root cause of eczema, and what is your approach to impacting your children and patients' outcomes through food? How can moms who are listening who have children with eczema start to clean up their diet and impact their skin in 7 days?
Yeah, the number one, I think, misconception is that eczema is a skin condition, because when you go to your doctor, and I'm not, this is what I knew too. This is what I knew 10 years ago. When you go to the doctor and you have eczema, they're going to send you to the dermatologist where you're going to get a steroid cream. And then you go to the allergist to see if you have any food allergies. And no one says, hey, back it up. What are you eating every day? What is your gut health? Because eczema is just a mirror of what the gut is looking like. And eczema comes from the inside. As, by the way, does asthma, seasonal allergies, ADHD, anxiety, all the other things. They're all rooted in the gut. Fun fact, Chinese medicine 5,000 years ago said, if the gut is not in check, the rest of you will suffer. And in us in modern Western medicine, we're like, so silly. Until the National Institute of Health was like, oh, wait, by the way, we've identified 3.3 trillion bacteria that live in your gut and regulate your hormones, your insulin, your cholesterol, your serotonin, which is your feel-good hormone, your dopamine, which is your focus hormone, and your immune system. Are bad. Actually, there's so many genes, like 3 pounds of an adult's weight is actually bacteria in our gut weight, which is crazy. So now we're like, okay, back it up. So it all goes down to the gut. And, that's why I wrote the book, because I discussed that you don't have to make 1,000 changes at one time, right? You and I do this and we're comfortable. I'm comfortable with elimination diet. We know how to replace, because a lot of people are like, take away food, but no, you got to replace, you got to replenish the body. We know how to do this because of the years of medical education we've had. And but we need to start slow. And I'll say the first step for a mom with a child who has eczema, processed foods. How do you do that? Because we're overwhelmed by it, is we're going to start, forget the front of the package. We're going to look at the back and we're going to look at the ingredients. If you can't read it, don't eat it. If it's more than 5 ingredients, we're going to put it back. That's why my book is called The Rule of 5. That's actually how it came about, because my husband's like, what I know from you is that when I go to the store, I flip the package over, and if it's more than 5 ingredients, I put it back, because rarely does a processed food with good ingredients have more than 5. It's usually more than 5. You're in the preservatives, the food coloring, the sugar, and all the other stuff. So that's just a simple step that you can start like right now. Go into the pantry, flip over your packages, see how many of them are only 5 ingredients. Eye-opening. The next level up is going to be sugar. That's one of the big things that we did in Instagram in what month is it? April. Last month in March, we went after sugar, and we were digging into the pantry of all the different things. And this is what I do. And I found sugar in my late July corn chips. I was so upset. Can't even tell you what I said in that pantry. I have this herbal tea that I love that was for calming nerves, sugar in it. Why? You know, there's all these things that even when you think you know, be careful because you often don't know and it's hiding. So really reading the ingredients with the different eyeballs and looking out for sugar, which is lurking in more than just cookies. And then, you know, of course, we talk about dairy and we talk about gluten and other kind of food eliminations, but we can't go to those until we do the basics. And probably a lot of your folks are listening already know about processed foods and know about sugar. Dairy is next. And again, but you can't remove dairy without replacing it with really good, nutritious food. Same thing for gluten as well. And then, you know, working with somebody that really helps you rebuild the gut. It's not like you take a multivitamin and you rebuild it. Oh, and that's my other favorite. You cannot out supplement a bad diet. So I have a lot of folks like, I've tried probiotic and I tried vitamin D because I heard you talk about it. I was like, did you change the diet? So in our clinic, when you work with me and even in my course, we don't get to the supplement. You cannot get to the supplements until you've done the dietary modifications. And, you know, a lot of people are like, when are the supplements? When are the supplements? Like, you can't get to the supplements until we've changed the diet. So that's where I would really start.
Awesome. So if someone's going to be doing an elimination diet and they've pulled out the processed foods and they pulled out the sugar, and I'm assuming, and I don't want to assume, but I'm assuming that you're doing that to prevent dysbiosis, to really stop feeding yeast and candida and those types of microbes and things of that nature, and really focus on gut health, right? Decreasing inflammation, balancing blood sugar, things of that nature. And then you're dropping into dairy. What other foods are common food allergies that you find or that you eliminate on an elimination diet? If someone has done those, you know, pulled everything out of their pantry, removed the sugar, they heard that dairy was an issue, they pulled dairy out of the diet, and their child is still covered in rashes. What's our next line of defense?
It's going to be gluten. And again, a lot of people are like, you say gluten. Dairy and gluten in itself are not bad. The problem is we're overdosed in it. And, you know, whenever you may go, not true, I want you to think of this. Think of going to your Thanksgiving dinner and telling them that you're gluten-free or dairy-free. Tell me what you're going to eat. Nothing. You can't eat the turkey, which is, again, ludicrous. So we are bathing gluten and dairy, and that's really the problem. And if you think of a child's diet generally, I say breakfast. I want everybody to like think, imagine breakfast right now. Are you imagining pancakes, waffles, toast, cereal, oatmeal, hopefully some eggs? Yeah. What do all those things have in common? Beige white foods. I want you to think snack. Imagine what snack is. I'll give you 2 seconds. Okay, snack. Snack is going to be crackers, chips, granola bars, right? What are all those things have in common? Beige foods that are all gluten. So everything we just named right now is gluten. So it's everywhere. And that's why it's so hard to eliminate, because if I told somebody you are now intolerant to Brussels sprouts, people are like, sweet, done. You're right. No one is intolerant to Brussels sprouts, FYI. So many of my patients are intolerant to dairy and gluten because they have it all the time, and the body does not like the same food over and over and over again, especially if you're dealing with leaky gut. Then we move to eggs, and then we move to nuts. This is where we have to be very careful, and we really got to work with somebody, because this is when you can really nutritionally deprive the children or the adults, because it becomes really scary if you don't know what you're doing. Once you know what you're doing, once you get a groove on, it ain't no big thing, kids. I promise you, I've done this in my own house. I've done the full elimination diet, all top 8 allergens, including alcohol, coffee, sugar, because when you are certified in functional medicine, that is your homework. And you got to do this homework for 6 months. So I've done it. I've done the whole thing, and I've done it again with my child who had the eczema exacerbation. And it is doable, but it's challenging, and it is okay to ask for help.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would say in my practice working with young children, when they pull out the processed foods, when they pull out even those highly glutinous, blood sugar dysregulating, just like the stuff that you crave, the processed carbs, right? When you pull that stuff out, I don't care how whole grain it is, quote unquote. And then they get to the eggs and they're like, okay, like I'm making a blood sugar balancing smoothie with nut butters and chia, and then I'm making eggs. And when you start to pull out what you're saying, like the eggs, and then you start to pull out the nuts, And then they go, where am I getting my nutrition? So many kids rely on eggs as a source of B vitamins and choline and protein and nut butters and things like that. What would you say if you were thinking of day in the life for a mom who was going to feed their child breakfast, lunch, snack, dinner? What would the day look like if they were kind of living that elimination diet lifestyle? Where would they find the most nutrient dense options?
Oh, such a good question. I'll tell you the one thing that is mind blowing. Here we go. You can have dinner for breakfast. Because if we were to go to Japan, when I went with my children and my kids were like, why do we have dinner for breakfast? I was like, hey, kids, guess what? Food doesn't know what time it should be served. Food is food. We have in our heads based on our culture, because in Japan, it's not a problem, but on our American culture, we're like, no, we only can have eggs and smoothies and oh no for breakfast, and I tell somebody like vegetable soup, they're like, have you lost your mind? And I'm like, no, we just need to train the taste. It's a mindset thing. So in my household, right? So right now I have kid on a full elimination diet, not full, a partial elimination diet. But in the morning, we have smoothies, and we have smoothies that are made with the appropriate milks, appropriate fat substitutes, protein substitutes. We do tons of fruits and vegetables. I do in my house, I do plant points. So everything, we count how many different plants because variety is key. So our smoothie, even in elimination, is 13 plant points. So before he goes to school, he has two gigantic smoothies. He's 17 years old, two giant smoothies. And then in his lunch today, I made the grilled chicken we made last night that my husband did the seasoning packet from scratch. And actually my 17-year-old grilled. And then we had bonza pasta that is not rice, that is all chickpeas. So then we're not going to have any gluten in it or any of the other ones. And we had a side salad with lots of plant points in there. And actually that's what his lunch is today, was last night's dinners, today's leftovers. And then for dinner tonight, we're probably going to do fish tacos. So now we're getting fish, and how we're going to do the tacos, we use cassava flour because we can't use the almond flour that we usually use at this time. And then I do a cowboy salad that is like 12 plant points. And I do have a picky eater because that sounds amazing. Everyone's like, but what about the picky eaters? Oh, I got one of them too. Guys, I got you covered. I mean, in my house, they try all of these things. Anyway, so I have a picky eater that sometimes eats air at dinner. He like literally he's 14 years old and he eats air, and I don't care. I don't really care. Sorry, kid. Like, I've made dinner. And anyway, and for picky eater, I take the cowboy salad, and he wants it deconstructed because he doesn't want the corn to touch the beans, which he doesn't like to touch the red peppers, la, 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 la. Anyway, so he has 4 vegetables that are separated. He does guacamole. So he can put in about 7 plant points, even though he's a picky one, because I do accommodate the splitting of the stuff. But that's what Jake's meal looks like in a day in the life. And, when I make waffles for him, I do use a flax egg until we're going to bring the eggs back. And, instead of the salsa, because he loves salsa, and right now we're on low tomatoes because anyway, I think that was also because he was consuming half a jar of Costco size salsa every day for a month. So I think that also was a problem. And anyway, so now we move to guacamole, and we alternate hummus, and we alternate other things that he can dip in that are not going to be half a jar of salsa.
I love it. That sounds like a delicious day. And I love that you just mentioned dinner for breakfast, because that's what I had to do with Sebastian. When you're talking about nutrient density, it's going to be coming like your vitamins, your minerals, like your protein. It's coming from animal protein. And that is the most satiating thing that these children can eat. And so that they're not wanting to snack all day long. I love dinner for breakfast. And I love that you said your food doesn't know when it should be served. That is the funniest thing I've heard all day. And really so true, because we really find ourselves in a box going, well, if it isn't eggs or oatmeal or a smoothie, like what can we eat? And it can be super simple. And just like you're saying, making the dinner the night before and having that for lunch, like really if you're spending the time making a homemade dinner for your family, can you double it up? Can you put it in a lunchbox? Can you, pick at it from your fridge at lunchtime? Like, this is how we eat clean foods all the time. It's to make simple things and have them around. I love that. So let's kind of get back to the disease states and diagnoses that you mentioned outside of eczema, ADHD, asthma. What are when you're treating the whole child, especially your own children, and you're starting in the pantry and you're starting in the kitchen, what other lifestyle factors are you considering for your kids? And what are things that moms should be keeping an eye out for when it comes to lifestyle? Because you mentioned your son was applying to colleges and that stress really was a trigger. What other lifestyle practices should moms really be focusing in on when it comes to their child's health?
Oh, such a good question. And I do want to I'm sure, and as I said, I think most of your audience probably knows this, but I do want to reiterate that when we're talking about ADHD, when we're talking about asthma, we're talking about eczema, these are all diagnoses that are helpful because it gives a name to something. And then unfortunately, on the Western side, it sends you to a specialist, the dermatologist, the pulmonologist, the psychologist, the neurologist, a lot of ists. And not no one, but in the traditional model, there's not a strong push for looking at the whole child, like you said, and holistic. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, you're a holistic doctor. That means you don't use medicines. I'm like, no, that's actually not what that means. That means that you look at the whole person. So what all those diagnoses have in common is fire inside the child. And when it's inflammation. And when the fire is going out of control in some kids, because of their family history, it shows up as ADHD. In some children, shows up as eczema. In some people, shows up as asthma. As we have seen when in the current state, when you get a viral infection like COVID, for example, COVID for me might be exacerbating my eczema. In you, it might be exacerbating your asthma. In someone else, it may exacerbate their ADHD. I see this in clinic all the time. My patients, of course, have had COVID, and it always goes back to their level of inflammatory trigger. So if their trigger is eczema, that's what flares up when they get COVID, or ADHD, that's what we're dealing with. So all of them have in common is the internal fire. And the internal fire comes not just from your nutrition, comes from stress, comes from electronic use, comes from lack of outdoor. I call it natural deficiency disorder. It comes from the chemicals in our environment. It comes from the water that we're drinking, because it's not one thing. We all want to point to one thing. What is the one thing that caused my child's, eczema? What's the one thing? There's not one thing. It's a whole slew of things that are coming together. And then you get the straw that broke the camel's back, right? So all these things were coming together. And then pollen came and boom, you have a massive eczema flare that you've never seen before, because that's it. There was just no more room in the inflammation bucket. And then it all went over. Stress, going back to stress is the most under-recognized toxin in the American culture. When my kids were little, we were scheduled for all the sports, after school language lessons, because you need language, and the educational system cut out language. But we also did drama, because you got to be well-rounded. They had piano lessons. We ran to an activity all the time. I had a nanny because I was working all the time, and her job was to chauffeur. She's basically my children's Uber driver to all the different activities. And then we scaled back because fun and interesting turn of events, my husband and I were getting burned out. Odd. And so we started scaling back, and I was like, oh my God, we're so chilled. We're just doing so much better, right? And then we moved to New Zealand, where we realized we are completely nuts, like just completely out of our rockers. The Kiwis looked at us like, what is wrong with you people? They are just, what is happening? You go to school there, you have an activity, and then you do family time, and the kids play outside. Even in the school, the kids play outside. You eat your lunch outside. They told me, they're like, oh my gosh, Mrs. Temple, we heard in America, in schools, you guys have these things called cafeterias. I was like, yes, they're deep, dark dungeons that have no windows and serve you orange, gooey stuff they call cheese and processed foods that make children sick. It's amazing. They're all like, wait, what? Because in New Zealand, you bring your lunch to school and you eat it outside if it's raining, underneath a covered porch. And if it's nice, you eat it outside in the playground. Anyway, but the whole point was that their culture taught me that we are out of our minds. Even when we walked down the street, we were the fastest walkers in Wellington, New Zealand. Everyone else's pace was like a third of our pace. Everyone's like, where are you guys going? Like, we're like, we're strolling. This is just strolling. And anyway, so it took us to move to another country and another culture to realize just how stressed out of our minds we are. Then, of course, came back to the States, and then I started a business, and then I went on TV all over the country. So the crazy came back real quick. And then we had a pandemic, and that shut that down. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I'm going down the same back things. But anyway, so our American stress level is ridiculous. And the social isolation that has happened now has taken this to the millionth degree. We have a pandemic of anxiety, depression, and stress that we have never seen before. And no one's talking about it except you and I, and a couple other people on Instagram. But it really feels like no one's talking about it. This is massive. The amount of the effect that this is happening on the children is, I have never seen anything like that. And then what we did on top of the stress, because now the parents have to Zoom work, do Zoom school. So now they're educators. They have to do political science because of all the unrest that's going on. They now have to be nutritionists. Oh, chefs, because you can't even eat anywhere else, right? You also have to be the entertainer because your children can't have any friends. So now you have to be the entertainment. It is too many things. And then you've lost trust in the Western medicine. So now I've got to be the MD. Like there's too many degrees you got to get as a parent these days. You know, our job should be to love and hug our babies and read them books at night and cook them a good meal. Right. We have so many jobs that we're stressed out of our mind, and our stress is infectious to our children because they just draw off us. Fun, interesting study was done with a mom and a baby, and the mom is holding the baby in front of her, above her, and she's smiling and talking sweetly to the baby, and she's just grateful for the baby and thinking about the baby and just wishing the baby just wonderful thoughts and healing wishes. And the mom's heart rate synced with the baby's brain waves. And you can see the tracing in heart math. You can see a totally congruent tracing from both the two humans. They repeated the experiment, and they told the mom, hold the baby, look at the baby, smile at the baby, coo with the baby. In your mind, you think about work, think about homeschool, think about Zoom school, think about your shopping list, think about all the things that you have to do, your email list. And all of a sudden, the baby's heart, the brain waves and mom's heart waves were completely disjointed. There was no overlap. They were not even in the same, it looked like they were not even in the same room. So oftentimes we hang out with our babies and our children, and I call my 20-year-old a baby, by the way. So I have I hang out with my babies, and I have to have a day, it's called No Tech Tuesday, when I walk in the house, the phone goes down, the laptop's closed, and I focus on my children, because otherwise, like last night with an eczema masterclass, all that dinner I could think about was a masterclass. What am I doing next? And I wasn't present. I knew I wasn't present, and they knew I wasn't present, but that will make them more stressed. So we have to be so intentional on looking at our children and being present with our children, because just because you play Candyland doesn't mean you're really playing Candyland, and they can feel it, and you don't have to say a word. They'll pick up on your stress, and then their eczema flares up, or their behavior goes off kilter. I mean, I have so many examples. And yes, I've been to counseling with my children and learned so many things about things that I was doing wrong that I didn't know. It's not a shameful thing. It's just sometimes you just don't know. And you mean the best and you try the best, but you just don't know.
Wow. I love the science behind that. I mean, it definitely, I'm sure is making all the moms listening, because it's making me feel this way, is like, yeah, I've been playing Candyland and been thinking about the blog post I needed to do, or the client I was going to call with next. And it's just, I love science because it empowers me to change my behavior. It's been something that's done that my entire career, and even in my youth before I went into nutrition. But that's just really powerful. It's boundaries that we need to really set. And if we're overwhelmed with work, it's trying to find a way to pull back when we can, or have a No Tech Tuesday, or whatever it is that you have in your control to find the time, not find the time, but make the time and remember that you really want your heart rate to sync with your child's brain waves, and you have the ability to do that. Like, that is powerful. I love that. So can we talk about some of the challenges? Because obviously we all want to pull out the processed foods and the sugar and make dinners every night. And we have all these jobs, as you so eloquently put. what are some challenges that you faced as a mom and as a physician, as a pediatrician, when it comes to making recommendations for parents? Because the world is starting to open back up. People are hanging out again. There are kids' parties with birthday cakes and pizzas and things like that. How do you handle that personally? And how do you handle the conversation with your children?
As busy people, that's why my motto, and it doesn't matter how chronically ill the child, we always start with one thing. And it's not the one thing that works for me is not going to be the one thing that works for your family. So I try to figure out, okay, what can you do? I give a list of things. What can you do? And then the family picks what they can do. And then you do that one thing for a week, 2 weeks, or however long it takes you. There's no shame in taking it slow. There's nothing wrong with that. All great goals start with one simple step. And then after you do that, you feel empowered by it. And we got it. And it's got to be a tiny step. It can't be like, I'm changing the diet. And it can't be like, I'm getting rid of sugar. I'm like, we are changing sugar at breakfast. So you got to go tiny and small. Otherwise it's overwhelming and you're too busy. If I said, okay, well, you just have to, when I first started my journey, I said, okay, well, I just need a different Cheez-It alternative. And then I went to the store and found the Cheez-It alternative with good ingredients. And then just did that. And it took me a month. That's okay. That is okay. But taking it in small steps, you cannot do 1,000 things and you're not a bad person. And stop comparing yourself to the person on Instagram, because that's all they show you. And one of my things, I'm always showing like the ugly behind the scenes of what's going on in my house, because it is not all rainbow and unicorns. But you look at other people and they're like, oh my God, I'm so amazing. No, you're not. You're crying at night. We know you are. So give yourself a break. But, I'm going to go even one step further. Mindset. If you decide that your children's health is important, nothing will stop you. If you think all of this is baloney, you're not going to do any of it. I don't care how awesome the podcast is, how awesome my book is, how cute we are. Like, it doesn't matter. If you as a person are like, this is important to me and my child will no longer have asthma, you will move mountains and you're going to figure out a way, right? Like you and I, we start a business. Everybody's like, how'd you start a business? I'm like, I had a cup of coffee with a friend. They're like, what? You have a cup of coffee and then you have the next cup of coffee and the next person tells you another tip and then you do another tip and you're like, boop, 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 and you create a business. And the same thing with our health, but it starts with the mindset. If we don't have the mindset that we're going to end electronics, that we're going to spend time with our children, you're never going to have the time. You're always going to be too busy. There's always that birthday party. There's always the naysayer. There's always the shameful people. And now my new favorite word, I'm always going to be canceled. So if you have the mindset, none of that matters and you'll figure out a way. And then you're going to figure out that tiny little step that's going to make you feel successful, which will empower you to make the next little step. And when it comes to our children, we came from a culture where it was like in the past, it was like, because I said so and because I'm the parent. And then now we're in a culture like, what do you want to eat? What do you want to have for dinner? What would you like? I'm like, whoa, hold up, people, hold up. A 3-year-old should not have a say in what's for dinner. They can choose between chicken pot pie and fish tacos, but you don't give them a choice. Like, oh, they always want to have pizza. Of course they always want to have pizza. I always want to have pizza too. So, kind of reining it back and understanding our role as a parent. We are not supposed to be our children's friends. We're supposed to love them, adore them. And but sometimes it ain't pretty. Sometimes they need to do chores and they're not going to like it. And sometimes they're going to eat broccoli when they don't want to, or they eat nothing because they refuse the dinner. Tough noogies. It's time to stop feeling like bad people. I think the maternal guilt, which another thing we don't talk about, the maternal guilt is enormous. And with every child, it gets bigger and stronger and more gripping around the neck, right?
So true.
And until we let go of a little bit, you can never let go of the whole thing. Until you let go a little bit and you're like, nah. We can't move to our next step because that is always preventing. So that's why there's not even a point to really talk about do X, Y, Z. Where's your mindset? Are you ready to do this? And then let's do it.
Yeah. Well, let's say someone's ready to do it and they want to do your plant points. What does that look like? How can they start counting and gamifying the diversity in their diet?
Yeah, you know what? All kids. Well, I live in a household of shocking of overachievers who are really competitive. It's tough to imagine this. But anyway, all kids respond to this. In my clinic, the kids. I have 3-year-olds that respond to this. They're like, "Ooh, how many plant points do you have? Let's count the points in on your plate." And they're like, "Ooh, strawberry 1, blueberries 2." So each variety of plants counts as 1 point. And then you make a game, and depending how old your kids are, it's like, okay, well, if you get 5 points, we play outside for an hour. If you get 10 points, you get to pick the park we're going to. So make it a fun thing. For some kids, you can go for every plant point, you get 1 minute of one-on-one time with a parent. The number one love language of children is quality time. They don't want all the garbage we buy. I promise you it's quality time. So if you say for every plant point you eat tonight, we have that many minutes to read your book. We have that many minutes to play Candyland or whatever you want to do. All of a sudden, it became interesting. For the older teenagers, they can get other privileges. Yes, you can use screen time. Now we just talked about screen time. You could do screen time if you want to. But I'll tell you, even my teenagers, quality time will outsurpass screen time, because we make it a point that this is our game night. You pick the game. Or even if we do a movie, which is better. Yes, I know it's screen, but then you do family and we cackle. We're watching the show called Ted Lasso. Oh my gosh. We are cackling and carrying on, and we're laughing and engaging throughout the whole show, rather than just like we're all watching YouTube and not speaking. So anyway, but plant points is so easy. And if your kids are not eating any points, don't start with 30 as the challenge. Start with 5. If your children are already eating 10, go to 30. You can do 2 plant points a meal, or you can do 10 plant points a meal. You can move it however you want to, and you could use the reward system. I prefer that you don't buy them toys and you don't give them money for it, because that's not a money thing. I'm a big quality time person, because I think we all have plenty of money. Even though you're struggling to make the rent, you still have plenty of money. We do not have enough quality time.
I completely agree. I mean, our time is our most valuable resource, and it's the thing that makes every human feel whole, is to be seen and to be heard, and to allow someone the space to emote, whatever it is that they need to do. And these children need the space to do that, and to be seen with eye contact and love and all of that. I love that. I want to clarify so people can get going on this. We're not just talking about fruits and vegetables. We're talking about nuts and seeds and beans, correct? For plant points?
And herbs. Yeah. If you put cilantro on your cowboy salad, if you put parsley on salad, if you do sprouts, you're correct. Those are all amazing plant points. If you use oats, if you use lentils, if you use beans, if we're using whole grain rice, if we're doing, volcanic rice or black rice, those are all in the plant point. They just have to be grown from the ground. And it's not in a whole wheat cracker. That is not a plant point. You actually have to eat like the quinoa.
Got it. I love it. Well, you've given our listeners so many great tools. I think the Rule of 5, your book, which is, a bestseller and something I definitely recommend the audience go check out. Never buy a product that has more than 5 ingredients. That's pretty simple. If your husband can do it and put the box back, anyone can, right?
Anyone can.
And incorporating plant points, giving our children the quality time they deserve, and really having that mindset of, are you going to change your child's life? Are you going to be their parent and not their best friend? Even though, eventually grow into being friends, but it doesn't have to happen in their formative years when their microbiome is in flux and when they need you to protect them.
They don't have the brain power. We love, they're so, especially when they're really tall and they're really the smart ones that are speaking in full sentences and they say these amazing things. Don't be fooled. They don't have a frontal cortex that is firing yet, because that doesn't fire until they're late. Actually, it doesn't really fully mature until 25, if we're going to be honest about it. And so they do need us to help them guide with their electronics, with their food, with their stress. They are looking for, even when they push back, they still need us. And we need to have the courage to be the parents that we said we're going to be. Because remember before you had kids? Let's be honest. Were we not amazing parents before we had kids? I was the best. I had some really good advice and I had some really strong rules until I had kids, and they try to break me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's constantly recommitting to those rules that you have, and or just being really open and direct about the conversation. Like, of course you want the sugary popsicle. Of course you want the candy. Like, I do too, but boundary, here's what we're doing instead. I love it. It's such good stuff. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Anna Maria. Where can people follow along and what can they learn?
This was such a great episode. I seriously can just be kind of continue on for it. I can have a sequel.
Yeah.
But would love to see you guys. My book is on Amazon. It's The Rule of Five, a parent's guide to raising healthy kids in this unhealthy world, where you're just going to take tiny little steps and apply them every day. And you do not have to commit to a million stuff. It makes your life so much easier. I'm on Instagram, tons of free educational advice. I do call it nerd Instagram because it's quite nerdy. Lots of facts to help you raise, to empower and educate you to raise healthy kids. And it's at Dr. Ana Maria Temple. And certainly on my website, which is drAnaMaria.com, where we have courses that we have our eczema course that relaunched yesterday. We have hundreds of patients that have and families that have seen so many great results where traditional medicine had failed them. And we would love to be able to join with you and your family and help you. So come on over to, and also YouTube. Now I'm trying to take over YouTube because YouTube is, as my teenagers told me so. So anyway, but they're all based on my name. Everything you can find me just using my name. And I'm so honored to be here and talk to you about this really important topics.
It was wonderful. And I'll make sure that all of those links are in the show notes and a couple of your challenges like plant points and the rule of five.
Those are easy and we can start implementing them today.
Love it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for listening to Be Well by Kelly. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Learn more at bewellbykelly.com and follow me on Instagram at bewellbykelly. I would love if you picked up my books, Body Love and Body Love Every Day. They're sold on Amazon and at all major booksellers.